everyone, welcome to our Claris FileMaker training course on how to build a custom CRM in 30 days. This training is designed primarily for beginners or those of you who need kind of a refresher with the Claris FileMaker platform. Over the course of 30 days, we're going to spend about an hour each day covering topics from the very basics of the Claris FileMaker platform in terms of the tools, the products, deployment, security, all those things you need to know about as you build a custom application. So keep in mind that towards the beginning of the training, the topics are more basic in nature. And as we get towards the end of the training, they're somewhat more advanced, I would say probably intermediate level topics. Now keep in mind this special part of this training is that while we're not only talking about the FileMaker platform, we're talking how you can rapidly customize an existing free CRM that you can download today. It's unlocked. So taking that CRM and customizing it to your organization's particular needs. Now, a couple important links to keep in mind. One is that if you need a copy of FM Starting Point, the free unlocked CRM, visit fmstartingpoint.com and press the button. And then our system will shoot you an email with the current links to that CRM. If you're looking for additional FileMaker training, visit fmtraining.tv and press the bundles button. And that will allow you to get more of this highly animated and somewhat energetic training material to help you through the learning process with the Claris FileMaker platform. Lastly, if you have questions about the FileMaker platform or you're looking for some additional help, maybe some one-on-one coaching help, feel free to email us at support@rcconsulting.com. Hi everyone, welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm Richard Carlton here at fmtrain.tv, where we are actively working on the next day of FileMaker training. This is the final week of our 30-day CRM deep dive kind of, well, it's a dive into FileMaker specifically tuned for beginning and intermediate people. Today's conversation, we got Calvin Mosiman is here. Today is charts. I wasn't going to do charts, but was it Lonnie or someone? Some of you folks that were really bent out of shape that I wasn't going to do charting, so we're doing that today. Calvin, let's talk about you. I'm going to quit sharing my screen. What are we doing today with charting? What are we doing?
So we're looking at FileMaker charting, how to set it up, the different kinds of data you can show in the charts, and then I have a sample file that shows a few different charts and how I came up, or how I was able to figure out how to build those using the FileMaker charting that's built in. So here we're first looking at FM Starting Point, and I just want to look at a few places where we are using charts in the app to display data. So right here, right on the home screen, as soon as you log in, you see we've got a monthly gross revenue over the last 12 months. And here we've got, right now, there's not 12 months of data, so we're just seeing 6 months of data. We also see the top 5, and this would be based on the invoices table. The next quadrant here, we have the top 5 sellers in the last 12 months. So this is looking at products and invoices and giving us what we sold the most of. And then we have the top 5 performing accounts. These would be like clients. So we have the top 5 people that purchased the most in the last 12 months. Another place you can find, and these are all cached charts. We're saving the data in fields for the chart specifically. We go over to invoices, and we have this charts area, and this will give us a chart. And this one is it is set up through the current found set. So you'll notice if I select Command J to show all, we just messed up the chart. It doesn't really work without having the found set very specifically set up for the data that we want to see. And when I switch between,
I'm gonna interrupt as we go along here, Calvin. I'm gonna be a little bit involved here. So Dimok, this is what you're talking about, right? I'm talking to Dimok on Discord. He just posted a really great question that's really important. And so as you finished of showing where these charts are at, throw it back to me briefly, Calvin. I want to tee this up for you a little better. I didn't tee it up very well for you, so, but yeah.
Yeah, so we have sales by month, and we can change it what year we're looking at. We have sales by year as well. And you'll notice that when this is dependent on the found set. You'll see the found set changing when we go between the tabs through script triggers. And then the last place that we have a chart is over here in the projects, where we track how much has been paid and how much is due on invoices for a given project. We've got this nice pie chart here. So those are a few charts that we're using in FM Starting Point, and this one again is a cached one. These are a few different charts, and so what we're going to switch to now, those are kind of some implementations. And this isn't really an implementation. This is just a demo to show a sample of what a dashboard could look like. And we'll dig it deeper into this after Richard.
You ready for me to do this real quick? So let me quit sharing your screen briefly. I'll share mine back real quick. Margaret gave me this charting, but she really doesn't have a background in charting. And this is what I want to point out on this a little bit. First off, there's built-in charting into FileMaker, okay? And this is like the operative, I want to say the operative right here, okay? I don't know what else to call it. It's like a major downer, and I'm just gonna, it just is. I'm not gonna say why or how we got to that place. I'm just gonna say that power users and developers, when you go into layout mode in FileMaker, Diamok, when you go to FileMaker and use you're in layout mode, you have precise control over where the fields go. Now you might be trying to wrestle with what the field says, the calculation or something like that, but if I want a piece of text to go right here, I can make it size 9 font with this color, with this exact thing, and I mean like pixel precision perfection, right? Charting is one of those outliers in the FileMaker platform that doesn't behave consistently with the rest of the platform. It basically is Claris licensed a charting system from another company, and they glued it in. They don't use it as a general rule, and so as a result, they think it's great because they put it in there and no one really complains about charting. The problem with this charting is that it has pretty substantial limitations. You're going to see these today. Calvin showed you some really great demos, but if you end up not really liking, not so much the data that's being exposed, but like, oh, I want this yellow to be blue, but a kind of blue. Like if you work, once again, we talked about artists, right? And if you have a customer or you or yourself work for some sort of, I would say a marketing firm or an art gallery or something like that, they have very precise requirements on how their stuff looks because the whole business is a bunch of artists and they want it their way. They want it exactly their way. That's why they typically use Apple. It's, and it's more money, but blah, blah, blah. They're drawn to that higher level of precision. The charting doesn't provide that. So the charts we're going to show you today are great, but if you get to a spot where you can't customize it, which you'll run into fairly rapidly. Like, I don't like this yellow. It needs to be some other color. They have some canned rainbows, some libraries of colors, but it applies all those colors to the chart. And so you can't really choose specific colors. Like I want this one and use a little, like the little color wheel in FileMaker and layout mode, and you can select that. So what we're going to show you today is a couple important things. One is that understand the internal charts are visually limiting. If you want more precision control, you're going to have to use another charting tool. And we talk about that in this PDF here. Other charting options, right? And then the other part of this, which comes in right down here, which Diamok brought this up, is that I wrote this in here. I'm not sure this will make it into any sort of final book. This is how I'd write the book, but I said the road to database health frequently starts with an document statement like, I want charts, or I want to access my FileMaker database on my iPhone from anywhere in the world without an internet connection. Those statements are equally dangerous because it might sound simple, but on the back end, there's a lot of moving pieces to make it work. And so when you're going to create a chart, these are things you need to consider. If the chart is for you, you should already know this, but a lot of us are going to build a chart for someone else that's paying us. Ken probably needs a chart for someone else in the hot air balloon administration, and then some board of governors or the people that run that organization need a chart on something. If you run into a person that wants a chart, have them scribble on a piece of paper, on a napkin, on something, kind of like what the chart looks like. You got an x-axis, a y-axis. And for those, most of you hopefully ask for a chart, you understand that to chart something, you need 2 columns of data that match, right? So Diamok was asking about months and things like that. So if you had you would have January and a dollar amount, and February and a dollar amount. So these are matching values. Now, the values can come to you in a couple different ways. We'll talk about that, but you have to kind of fundamentally understand that a chart is composed of at least two different values that are matched together, okay? X and a Y coordinate, right? Makes sense? I guess you could have I'm not going to try to get into just doing a chart, one-dimensional chart, but that's like a progress bar, right? But I say get it scribbled down on paper will help give you a steer. When creating the chart, you're going to need at least 2 matching columns a day. I just said this, right? Essential, okay? The third thing is that once you're in FileMaker, you've got to find that data somewhere. And Calvin's going to spend some time on this, and Calvin can go as long as he needs to today. If you run over Calvin, I'm totally good. Do you have to stop? Do you have a hard stop at 2 o'clock, Calvin?
No.
Okay, good.
I'm good.
So Calvin is going to do this, whatever it takes to get through these demos. He's got great demos on this. But you're going to have to get the data formatted in one of 3 ways, right? It's either the data is like, if you had 10, you have had 10 points on the chart, maybe you have 10 records in your current table. And then you're gonna see 2, and you're gonna grab 2 fields. Those 2 fields together will create those points for you on the chart. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is with related data. Okay, that's another way of doing it. The third way is with delimited data, which I think is what we're showing today. It's also the highest performance, and so it's very important that it's charts. People say they want charts, but then they don't understand. This helps them understand even what the hell they're looking at. And then this is kind of the technical under the hood of it a little bit. You have to understand there's 2 columns of data. I went to engineering at UC Davis to be a mechanical engineer. So I was doing charts my first 3 months at that school, or at the college, university. So for me, charts are snap. But if you don't have a technical background, maybe you've not done them before. So understand there's 2 columns of data and they match. They create an X and a Y coordinate. It's like if you ever played Battleship as a kid, one of you will find a great Battleship I can bring up on Discord and show that. But it's an X and a Y coordinate. B3, A5, and that is an X and a Y coordinate that you create with a basic chart, right? Yeah. So, well, that's that one. But if you had one that showed the board better, you can actually see the grids across the top and along the left, and that's really what charting is. So, anyway, yeah, you sank my battleship, right? So it's a game from when we were kids, and they were teaching us doing charting when we're 5 years old. It's really kind of funny. So, so now knowing this, we're going to kick it over and start the conversation on 1, understanding what our data is, right? Making sure we can identify the data, and 2, formatting it in a way to feed into a chart, okay?
Right. So we have here we've got a bar chart, a pie chart, 2 pie charts, and this line graph. And all of the data that is generating these charts is saved in two pairs of fields for each chart. So we'll open up this, and you'll see that each of these charts corresponds with one of these. So we'll see here, right now we're tracking states. So we're using the invoices table from FM Starting Point and have some demo data in there. So we see that there are 3 states that we have orders from. And if we look over here, we'll see the states are California, Florida, and New York. So these are the numbers.
Yes. So this
they correspond with them.
Chart 1, and so these 2 bits of data go together, and they go together, and they go together. Right? Makes sense. You have to have this. So Dimoc's going, how do I do a chart with months and stuff on it? This is going to be the month in here, and then a value in here, or something like that. Right? In fact, you see it kind of over here a little bit. That is the month and the year, month and the year. And then the minimum chart would be this right there. Okay, that makes sense. We have 2 columns. This would be the minimum chart, and this one's a little more sophisticated. He added a couple extra columns to indicate other stuff, and that's really cool. But that is, Diamoc asked this question. He wants to know about that. You already had questions right on this. That's why I'm kind of helping you, Calvin. Sorry about that. So there we go.
Yeah. So what I wanted to show here is, so if I change New York, I changed it to 607 and close this, you'll see that changed the chart right here. Now, when I say refresh charts, we've got some scripts that are looking at the actual records and generating those stats. And so that's how we're populating the data. But the charts themselves are looking at these static fields. Now, the reason why we use static fields is, like Richard said, the performance is much faster than looking through a relationship or looking at the found set.
Okay, so to explain what that means by static fields, it means that these are just number fields and you can change these, right? Change one of these to like 500 or something, right?
Yeah, so if I change this, let's move it to 1,000, we'll see that this chart jumps up to 1,000 for New York. When I say refresh, it's going to grab that data and jump it back down.
Right.
But so the static, this doesn't change unless we manually change it, like I just did, or a script changes it, which this refresh charts does.
Yes.
And this actually, I believe, let me just double check here. Yeah, these all need to be text fields, just because it's a return delimited list, and if it's a number, I don't think that would work. So but we have text over here, and we have numbers, a list of text over here, which is our labels. And then we have a list of numbers over here, which is the numbers that the chart evaluates. So let's go to and we'll see in the next, let's go ahead and look at the settings for this. So I'll open up the state settings, and you'll see.
So this is a chart object, right? What this is, a chart object? Okay.
Yeah, so if we look up here, there is this tool right here, and this would bring up our chart object, and we can set up, put in the settings we want there. But I'm going to look at this predefined one. And we're pointing the x-axis to the names. So California, Florida, New York. And it's helpful that they actually show you your real data here, so you can figure out what you want.
So this is that first column you saw. This is that second column. So once again, we kept saying 2 columns of matching data. And then on the chart, you're going to have to identify these, Dimok. Very important. Okay.
And we could put titles in here and say states and amounts. And you'll see that shows up here and here. But in this case, it's kind of self-explanatory what's going on, so we don't need to label it. And then, so this one's pretty straightforward. You can change styles and here, one thing that is important though, is that you select what kind of chart data you're using. So in this case, we are using the current record, and it's a delimited data. It's the return delimited list. We don't want the found set or related records. That would be for a different setup in how the data is set up. In this case, we're using this one because it's the fastest. Okay.
So Dimok just asked a question. Go back. Can you go back to, so that we're talking about this chart, right? Well, that chart right there. Okay. Now, go back to so when we're setting up the chart, we're going to identify the 2 fields. So let's go back to our fields real quick and that other layout real quick. Not there. These are, we're pointing them out, but the fields are right over in here. Yes.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So these 2 and these numbers, I'm going to say this again for Dimok. I don't think Dimok's ever done too much charting, which is fine. That's why we're here to educate people. That California, right? That's California. That is the number that is equivalent to that. So the number, this is like a 1. We talked about valueless before. So valueless is so Calvin, just change this over here for me real quick. Let's just put at the top, Rick, just select the entire field, select all, delete. Rick, and then you hit the return key, Calvin. Okay, return Dimok, D-Y-M-O-K. Okay, and then do another one, put another one on there. It doesn't matter, Fred, and then whatever. And then the value, there could be values over here. I guess they could be blank, but you want a value, some sort of value, maybe something, right? And do that, okay? So they're corresponding to each other. So Rick sold 332 glasses of lemonade, Calvin 130, Dimok 107. You're a very big underperformer. James 900, Fred 400. So now let's take a look at the chart. Once again, this is a fundamental. See what it did? Now you're like, well, that's ugly, right? So then they started running into each other, right? So then you have to think about that stuff a little bit. So there's a non-sliding something right there you have to fix. So yeah, so see how that works? So that's a major, and all these are like this. Even if the charts have different items, right? We're back to that battleship thing. Yeah, cool. All right, cool. I just want to hit that because this is such a big deal, and it's universal. And people said they want charts, and that comment about understanding the data is like a huge one. All right, so go ahead, Calvin.
And you can also go through here and see what what the data would look like with other styles. And so here we went from a column chart to a bar chart, and maybe that works better for what you want. And but you can kind of test these out. We don't want everything to be a pie chart. And usually if we have a line chart like this, it would make sense over time, but not in what we're looking at. So I'm going to go back to the columns. Also save.
Good job, Calvin.
And so we're going to see the same thing here. This setup on the staff is the same setup as far as pointing to as far as, okay, if we look over here, pointing to our labels and our data, we are doing the same thing that we're pointing to a return delimited list of staff names, return delimited list of the counts, and we just have it set to a different style or a different kind of chart, a pie chart. And then this is a pie chart as well. Now, the one that's a little bit different is this revenue by month. And here we are grouping the totals by month, and we're giving 3 different series. So as we saw in the data a minute ago, we have 1 column for the labels for what the months are, and then 3 different columns for the values that we want to display. And if we go into layout mode and select the settings here, we'll notice that the x-axis looks just about the same. We're just pointing it to the labels. But then on the y-axis, we have 3 different series. So we've got the gross, the net, and the cost. And each of these, the field is cut off there, but you can see that they're pointing to different repetitions. It's the same, which you could think of as different fields.
Okay, real quick. So once again, I'm just going to state this again, because I know this would be confusing for the first time. Hold right here, hold. If I go back to my tool, so there's your first field. To make a chart, the minimum required is 2 data elements, and then that right there would be the second data element. So data element 1, data element 2, that would give you like one of the lines here, right? But then once you learn that and you understand that, then you can add additional extra lines on the y-axis in this case, and you could have more than that. You could have more than these 3. But I'm just simply saying that 2 is the minimum. Like some people say, hey, I want to chart something and give me 1 column of stuff, right? Well, you need the second column. You need at least 2 columns. So there we go.
And we'll see other options. We can show or hide the legend, what those different lines are. Now here I have the fields angled, these labels angled slightly so that when there's a lot of data in there, they won't run into each other like we saw with the staff names before it was the layout was expanded. We can change the colors, and that's one of those limitations Richard was talking about. And once again, in this current type of setup, we want to say select the delimited data. I'm going to say done. And I'll go ahead and refresh this, and we'll see those go back to what our data is in the background.
Okay, so when you were say refresh chart, you're not actually telling the object to refresh, like these objects to refresh. What does this do again?
True. So the refresh chart is going into. Let me open up my layouts, and so I've got this. This is the data. This actual data. We're looking where the state is, the person who sold it, the type of invoice, and what the total. Grand total, cost, and net total.
So that's what we call raw data, the source data, the raw data. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what refresh chart does is it summarizes and pulls the data from this table and puts it into these fields and just updates them. So if I make a change, say to, let me make a big change so we can see this. So I've put a few more zeros in one of these records, and I say refresh chart. You'll notice that the chart changed a little bit, and we saw that move. Let me put a few more zeros in there. See if that.
Oh, there it goes. The bottom one. The bottom.
Okay, there. Now it's so high that's making everything else look like a flat line.
Yeah. So you have the raw data. You're going to somehow summarize that down in a couple different ways. We're showing you one technique. This file, you can download this file and take this apart, so you can see how we wrote this script. So let's go steal our code. Go steal our script. Steal that. Okay. So that right there refreshes that other screen, and then these feed off that other screen, right? So these feed off that other screen, wherever it's at over there, and then that updates it. Yeah, this is the raw. Then you have the with the yeah. So pretty cool, eh? Yeah, I like this. Actually, for Claris charts, let's just understand real quick. The one downside in this is if you want precision control over how that looks or the color here. Or maybe you have this up here, or you want to put some text across here. Does not apply if Dymock is involved because he's so amazing we can't chart him. If you want to put a message here based upon some sort of warning or something, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way, right? Those are all things that you would have to get more of a powerful charting tool to do, right? And so, and these colors here, they look great, but if, oh, that gold is a little bit too bright or too dark and I want it more purpley, can't change that.
And this is how limited the charting is. When I found out, I saw the technique that someone just takes this circle, this is just a plain circle object, and puts it over the chart. You can turn it, the pie chart, into like a donut.
It's a donut.
That just made my day. I was so excited that my charts could look a little different. Yeah. And that's how limited it is. The circle made me happy when I saw that. Yeah. But if we're ready to go take the next step in looking at this, we can. Do we have any other questions about this layout?
No. Ken wants to know where you're going, which is how you generate because you're taking the raw data and you're going to summarize it down to those delimited fields, right?
I was actually going to show how I something else, but we can look at that real quick. So and don't curse me quite yet. So in this case, I'm using XQSQL.
Oh, you gotta be shitting me. No. Oh my God. All right.
It was just faster to write. But if we look at this, I also wrote for one of the charts, I wrote a script so you could look at the script itself and figure out how and go through.
Can you run that and verify it actually works correctly?
Method 1 works and method 2 looks like it doesn't work. I'm not sure why. So maybe I needed to say show all records.
All right, try that.
Try that again. There we go.
There you go. So, okay, so stop everyone. Now I'm going to take back what I said about Calvin. So when he presses this button, it runs a script that does the SQL that Dymock loves, but you can also have it, instead of doing that one, you could have it run it with the FileMaker way over here, right? Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just to show the reason why I went with that, because when I first built this, I was in a hurry and trying to just get it done by 1 o'clock. So I was able to refresh all the charts with 40 lines. I'm able to refresh one chart with 47 lines.
Yeah. But this is what I would consider simple, generally simple understand. I would consider it low or lower code, right? Mm-hmm. The SQL stuff over here is on the deep end of the pool, right? Because it's not, I mean, this is plain English, set variable, duh, right? Perform fine, duh, right? Loop, duh. The SQL stuff's a little bit more deeper, but some of you have a background in that. Before SQL is a custom function David Angel wants to know.
So in this, so here, no, this is I'm using a let statement. So I am using 2 custom functions or 3 custom functions. GTFN is get table field name and GTN is get table name.
Okay, I'm glad you explained what that sounded like, because that sounded like something else. GTFN. I can
So
get
if we go
the,
to manage custom functions, we'll see that that is just getting the field name. So it's saying get field name, whatever field you point to, and then it just returns the name itself. And that just makes this calculation more robust and makes it so it doesn't break as easily. It makes it so it's not fragile.
cool. Cool. Calvin's killing it. Nice job, Calvin.
So we'll notice that when we did method 2 here, that we didn't get the right sort here. So I'm going to say show all records and then sort records by field. We'll say ascending, and we need to select which field. We'll do the state, or is it build to state? Build to state. There we go. So now when we say refresh with this one, it should be the right order. There we go. Okay. So any other questions about generating that data? I was mostly focusing on
well, it's an important part because listen, everyone can, well, for the most part, people can build a solution and have the raw data, all the invoices, right? And then you have to put it, you have to kind of aggregate the data as Ken said, properly aggregate the data somehow. In this case, we're using return delimited fields, right? Delimited fields. And then the chart works from that. So I think the hard part is for people to understand, hey, what is a picture of what we need? We need an X line, a Y line. So we're gonna need 2 columns of data. The data has to match. We got to take the raw data over here, run a script that feeds it in here, and then the chart reads it out of these 2 columns onto the chart. So it's really kind of this 3 kind of step kind of thing, right? I guess to a degree. So Ruben says, when you use custom functions, the field names will change automatically in the execute SQL statement. When you change a field name, normally you need to edit. Yeah. So he's pointing out why we would need that, which is great. So awesome. So if you want to go back to what you were working on,
okay,
the next thing.
So usually when I'm trying to figure out what kind of chart I want to do, I will look at these in a table view. And I think you can do this in other views as well. And they have the ability to create a quick chart. So we can say build chart by build to state. And it shows us this, that one didn't really work out. Let's try this again. We'll sort, and then we'll say chart by build to state. And here you'll see that this is the data we were really looking for: California, Florida, New York. And you'll notice though, when it's set up like this, you'll see we're pointing, the data is the state, and the y-axis is doing a count of the state. So it's counting it like a summary. And when we look at data source, it's using current found set. Now, this is a great way for me to figure out how I might want to set up a chart and what the different options are, how the data might look. I'm just starting with raw data. So I can say save as layout. When I say save as layout, and I think I might already have one of these, it creates a layout. And you'll see this is number 2. So I already had one of these created. And let's go ahead and look at what's going on in this. It already has, it created script triggers for me on layout enter that will set up the sort just the way I need it for the chart to work. So if I select Command J, let's hide all the records and show them again. Okay, so now it's not sorted, so that's breaking the chart. If I go to layout, let's go ahead and close this, manage layout, and I'm going to open up the build to state count 2. We'll say open. It ran that trigger, the on layout enter trigger, and set up my data, my sorting. You'll see it's sorted by build to state so that the data looks right. And you'll notice here that each of these, I've got an invoice total one that goes over time span. And I've got a bill type. So this one kind of corresponds with the pie chart we were looking at. But in each of these cases, I'm using the found set of the invoices. But this was kind of where I started to figure out what I wanted to do with that data and how I wanted to represent it in a chart. Once I had this done, I need to set it up. I wanted to set it up as a static chart, though. Static charts are faster and they're easier to work with. So I set up these, I call it cheat sheet chart. And if I open this, you'll notice that I have, this is just a demo. I've got multiple series, 3 series. I've got my title, my X data, my Y data, and I can mess around with this and figure out how I'm going to make that as a static chart before I deploy it wherever I'm going to put it. Now, in this case, this is a Kaplan-Meier chart that's used in medicine. And let's go to the next record. Now, I have an on-record load trigger that moves to a different layout. So here, this is where we figured out how I wanted to have my months in a return list, and then my data series as different dollar amounts, and having 3 series set up there. And these again are just like we were seeing in the other area, where you can change these in the record itself. And you'll see as I add zeros, that number at the end keeps jumping up. There goes way up.
So this is what we call the cached data. It's not, this over here is not the live data. This is what we call cached data. It's calculated either with a SQL statement or with the other method, which is a FileMaker statement. But the short version is that, yeah, once again, this came up from Tim. Tim asked a question, can you go over at a high level how you create the data in FileMaker method 1 or 2? Well, method 1 is SQL, and I'm not going to teach you how to do SQL because you can't do that in 5 minutes, okay? We can go over the other one if you want, briefly, I think. But the idea is, once again, we have the sort. This is what we call the raw data or source data, okay? We're going to somehow aggregate, that was the correct word. Ken reminded me of that a little bit ago. Aggregate it down to, like, there's a data here, and it's like sub-summaries, right? We talk about summary fields, sub-summaries. That data here gets aggregated down, and we stuff it in these fields here, okay? So raw data, aggregated totals, and then the chart reads out of here. So the chart takes all this stuff out of here and stuffs it onto the chart, okay? That makes sense? So that is the sequence. So this is a chart object. This chart, if you double click it over here, will pop up the chart. Is that the chart setup? That way, it's kind of a big window, right? Is it?
Yeah, yeah, it's called chart setup.
You make it a little bit smaller just for me, just for the moment, so we can see where this came from. It's very confusing. This window is too big. There we go. All right. So once again, go and close it. We're going to try this again. Every time we have a rough spot, we have to start the. So this is the chart. If we double click the chart, we get the chart setup window. This is a chart setup window. Under the top, there's 3 chart sections, but what we need to do is we have to specify kind of data source down there. Hit the data source for us real quick, Calvin. In this case of our demos, we're using delimited data. It has performance benefits. It's also easy to kind of mess with it. And it's really, at the end of the day, kind of a brute force way of building what you need to build. So you set that, then you come back up here and you identify the at least two delimited fields. They could be global fields. They could be fields in the preferences table, but somehow that's these fields. If you go ahead and close this window, you got X and Y. If you close that, there's your X, right? There, and then there's the Y. And you really don't need this stuff here, once again, right? We just need, at a minimum, the X and the Y. These are a aggregate data, which means it's a total of, some sort of totaling of the raw data. So pop a new window for me. Just do me a favor. Don't use the same window. Pop a new window. Okay, put the aggregate, put the source data on one side for me, put the aggregate kind of window over here. That way it's logically, we can walk through this one more time logically, because I'm jumping too many hoops here. And then if you could look at that script, your FileMaker script loosely.
Yes. So this one's not. All of these are just for testing. So these,
For
I don't
testing.
have scripts that are attached to
Feed
these.
these. It feeds
So
the other. Do this one.
Yeah.
Then.
So we'll go back over here, and I'll go ahead and open up the invoices script or the here.
So
and
yep. So that data there, pop to our fields over here.
Yep. So this data here, California, Florida, New York, is based on the data in this table, all 569 records. And so we've got California, we'll see that there is 332 records for that. Now, if I go to copy and find, I'll just do a find, you'll see 332. And I'll do another find for Florida. There's 130. So you're seeing what we're getting over there. These are the total number of orders.
Now these are the counts, but they could have been the total over here of some dollar amount if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, it could be. And that's exactly what we're showing down here is in breakout by month.
Yeah. So the idea is that you have raw data, you aggregate it down, and the chart reads those aggregated fields. It's literally why when people tell me this is the part that blows their minds, and then once you understand this, then it's easy for you. But it's why I've been resisting the charting conversation, because I knew people's heads would kind of explode a little bit. So what they want to do is they have the raw data and they're trying to figure out how to get to this. And there's this intermediate step between the raw data over here and the pretty picture. What's that intermediate step, right? So
right. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at this these methods that we're using. Now, to set up this data, we are first navigating to the invoices. So we have to be in the table where the data lives. It's living in invoices. And then we set a variable. In this case, I am saying I'm getting the value list items from the states value list. So if I go over here and so file, manage value lists, we'll see that I have this one value list called states_dynamic. And that just means it's pulling the values from this one field. And all that's doing is giving me a list of states.
Now, to be clear, he chose one method for generating these states. You could do it a dozen different ways. This is probably one of the faster ways, kind of almost like a Nick trick a little bit, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm going to go ahead and open up and put the states on here, build to state, and give this that value list so you can just see what that looks like. So now when I select this, you'll see it's CAFLNY. And so that was the fastest way that I could think of getting those that list. So that's giving me the list of states. And let's go ahead and just walk through this so we can see this in the data viewer. So let's go ahead and walk down. I'm navigating to my invoices table. See that? And now I set my variable, and you'll see that that's the same values that we saw in that value list. And now I have a counter. I'm using I for integer. And so the counter starts at number 1. And then I am using a get value. And then the I would be 1 for now. So I'm getting the first value out of here. And I will set that in the state. And it's going to exit the loop if the state is empty. So if we've got to the end of our list, there's no state, then that will cancel the loop. I'll enter find mode. And I can set to the field name, the CA, perform find. And here, if there's an error, it would give me a 0. Since there's no error, then I will say get found count. And I'm setting a new variable called state values. So you'll see this first value in this list is 332, which corresponds with the number of records found for California. Next, we will repeat that loop. So you'll see the counter goes to 2, and the state is now Florida. And when we perform a find, we were entering Florida in the state field, perform find should give us our Florida number, 130. And we update the state values to 332 and 130. So I'm replacing that with the list of values. And I'm just keep building this list with each loop until I run out of states. And now it's that state is empty because I ran out. Our integer is 4. We said get value, and there's no fourth value. It will exit. And now I can go back to my original layout that I started on. And here it just says set field and updates those 2 fields, and then saves the record. And at that end, our chart would refresh, and that ends it. That's the exit. So that's kind of a quick run through for how that script worked. Do we have any questions about this script?
Ken and Dymock are typing feverishly, but I like what you did, Calvin, because fundamentally the idea with the script is that you're going to loop, and how you get the elements in there, there's a dozen different ways within the loop to grab those elements. But yeah, bingo, that's what I needed. Ken says like the value list for setting the loop. Yeah. So we're using, once again, local variables. For those of you, I mean, Lonnie has had an ongoing kind of love-hate relationship with the variables, figuring them out. He's kind of got them mastered, but local variables only exist when the script is running. Once the script ends, they go away. So we collect the data, we save it in the variables, then right before the script ends, we take that data we've been collecting, and we write it into fields for saving. Right, so written into a couple fields. They could be global fields. They could be fields within the preferences table. Somewhere they are 2 fields that go together. They're kind of like a X and Y coordinate, right? Once again. So Lewis says, is that dollar state values variable a repeating field? Okay, so variables are, from your perspective, no. Okay, so that's a really good subtle point. You want to try to explain the difference between a repeating field and a value list?
Yeah, so
can you do that? I don't know I can do that. I mean, I kind of do it, but I can't do it in a way that won't confuse people.
Yeah, the state values variable is a return delimited list, but a repeating field is a little different. So if we
they're really similar. They're really similar. So I will credit someone with understanding why they're confused.
Right. So here in the chart month stats, I have a repeating field, and you'll see it repeats 10 times, and that's defined under storage. And I can say maximum repetitions 10. I could change this to 100. But that's on a field level, and you could think of each of those fields as holding a different value, but each of those repetitions can also have a list. So in the case over here, each of these 3 fields is a new repetition, and each of them, it's kind of hard to see. Let me make this a little wider so it's a little easier to see these values. So you'll see that they're all connected because it's a repeating field.
Really, it's a single field, right? With different levels within it. But
when you do a find on a repeating field, it searches each of the repetitions. So here now that it's expanded out, you can see that each of these, there's a list within each of the repetitions. And so the variable, if I go ahead and start that script, once again, we'll see that these aren't multiple repetitions within a variable. It is just a list. So how we're setting this, if we go back over here and look at the state values, we are using the list function. So list, and then we can have a number of items in there. And in this case, we are calling itself state values and then adding whatever the new value is, which happens to be the found count at the end of the list. And so the state values is a variable with a list of values, while a repetition is almost like different sections of a field that could each have different lists
Can I make
in
a
it.
suggestion? This is just a training
Yeah.
exercise. So from one trainer to another trainer, by introducing repeating fields in here is like giving cleaning drainer to someone to swallow, right?
Yeah, I added the repeating
This is a
fields just to
mistake.
make just
These
to
should
make it
these should
faster.
be this should be a field. This should be a field. This should be another field. This should be another field. Okay, to keep things simple. There's no reason to have these as repeating fields besides Calvin wanted to do something different.
I was trying to get this done as fast as possible.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
these, if you're building this, anyone else, Lewis, Tim, Keith, any of you folks are building this or on Discord, don't use repeating fields. Don't do what Calvin did. Just build them as, you'd have X, you'd have Y1, you might call it Y2, you might call it Y3. Don't use repeating fields. There's no reason for it. It's just confusing, and boom, and promptly someone got confused by, well, you're by incorporating into the same conversation, you end up with this. You end up like, well, is it if Calvin's using it, it must be important. In this case, no, it's not important. Only use a repeating field if you are a math major, a physics major, a chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, aerospace engineer, and you have a one-dimensional array and you need the benefits of a one-dimensional array. If you're not any of those people, don't use it. I'm a mechanical engineer and I wouldn't use repeating fields. Once again, repeating fields were created before FileMaker was relational. It was a flat file system. The repeating fields were created to make FileMaker pretend to be relational when it wasn't. That makes sense?
Right.
We're talking from literally 33 years ago. 34, 35 years ago. We're talking, that's how old that tech is. So Calvin threw some 35-year-old, piston engine into this car, and people want to know why. It must be important because you did it, right? So that's one of those things. Trust me, I'm an engineer, right? Yeah. And then there's duct tape across the giant crack, right? Perfect. Yeah. So the thing is, if you're an engineer and you can't think of a use of a one-dimensional array, then that means you have no need for a repeating field, because it's not 1990 anymore, and I mean that literally. Okay. So sorry for the confusion, everyone. Sorry.
And the difference between method 1 and method 2 is, in the first method, I used the value list items to set the state list. And in the method 2, we use a newer technique, which would be the list summary field. So I think it was in FileMaker 18, we got this new summary field called a list. So we can say a list of, and then the field that we want. So in this case, we were saying get the list of those and then only show unique values. And that was giving us the list. But the rest of it is all the same.
So once again, when we talked about how you're going to write the data, this collection inside the loop, it can be done. I can think of a dozen ways of doing it, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at starting point 2020, the full version, and you watch our paid training on this specific topic, I walk through how I collect that data. And it took me like 2 hours to walk through. It was painfully slow conversation, but I walked through it, and I think I did it slightly different than this. But once again, at the end of the day, you have a loop where you're spinning through, collecting the data, sticking in a delimited list, and then the chart runs off of that. Tim says he's an electrical engineer, so he uses repeating fields. Yeah, well, if you remember what a one-dimensional array is, if you have a need for a one-dimensional array, then you're covered. You're set. Any performance difference between a value list method and a summary list method, Calvin?
Yes. So in this case, it would be faster to use the value list method. In the case of the summary, to get them into alphabetical order, we had to sort the records, and so that's going to take some time. And we're manipulating that data. Calling a value list is very fast, so that would be the faster way.
Although with the improvements in FileMaker 19.3 or 4, some of the summary action is server side, but we haven't stopwatched it. But yes, that's kind of the idea. 19.5, no, no, we're talking about sorting, and sorting was already built in 19.3 or 19.4, wherever it was at. Yeah, 19.5 is the summary fields, right? So, but I think, didn't we discover that the other day with Hansa that it applied to some summary things, but not all the summary things, right? I can't remember. But if you, Calvin, you missed the thing with Hansa the other day, but there's like a 28,000% performance improvement if you happen to hit their new summary server side stuff, right?
Wow,
But you have to have
that's awesome.
19.5 Pro and 19.5 server. So the client has to be 19.5, the server has to be 19.5. And then it's like
Okay.
literally going from impulse power to warp drive. It's crazy, right? So yeah. So yeah, it's the problem is I don't know that it's been universally applied everywhere. Everything that says summary on it, I don't know. Like for example, go to field definitions real quick, and define just for fun, create a or find a summary field somewhere. So if you display one of these on screen in 19.5, I'm pretty sure that the performance improvement is with the total of an average of, which was the things we're doing. But if you do list of, is that performance improvement still in there? Probably, right? But I wouldn't swear to it. I would never swear to it unless I tested it, right? But yeah,
Hmm.
Ruben's thinking the same thing I am, right? So yeah, so Claris continues to improve the product. It's great. So yeah, very exciting day. So all the people who are kind of new to this charting, Dimok, Tim, Lewis, all you folks, we answered questions on this. We really, I kept beating the horse dead a couple times going in about the sequence here, but you can download the sample file now. Margaret's reposted it. Please download it. Ken, you got any comments in there for me besides, yeah, fill my, yeah, knowledge gaps. That's the whole point. What you find out in FileMaker is that like God, you feel like you're God, you know everything, and you find that one little nugget that you're missing, and you're like, oh, I feel stupid. And then someone turns on the light with that one little nugget, and it's like the lights come on. It's great. So yeah. All right. So I'm looking for topics for Thursday for beginners, right? Do not ask to learn SQL on Thursday, please. Tomorrow's going to be about in honor of Lonnie, who conveniently enough won't be here tomorrow, but that's fine. We're going to cover it anyway. We're going to be covering when to have multiple files, why you might want to have the multiple files in your solution, right? And what does that mean, and what are the implications thereof, right? Yeah, Ruben re-summarized it. Good one, Ruben. Thank you for that. I'd forgotten that. That was the snag, was the sum function. That's a function is what that is. I sometimes whenever people say case statements, I keep thinking that's a script step, but it's a function. The if function, because if functions are functions and also script steps, and someone says case and I think it's a script step, but then it's actually a function. So there you go. All right, cool. Well, Thursday will be something exciting. Oh, Alpha Lima 1961, how's it going? How to get a spline line chart? Okay, so real quick as a summary for this, once again, if you don't see a chart that you like, you're going to have to use a third-party product to create a chart. So a spline line, I'm not sure. You'd look at the line charts over here, and if it doesn't have the option you want, you're going to have to get a different product involved. Keep in mind, back out for a second. Calvin, show that raw data again, then show me my aggregated data real quick, that little part of it, because it's really kind of an important visual. I'm going to annotate here for everyone real quick. I didn't really cover this, so this is kind of an important idea. So everyone's going to have this. This is your database where you're collecting data in your CRM or whatever you're doing, okay? Then you have a charting system somewhere else, like over here, okay? The charting could be a third-party chart, right? Third party, right? If it's third party, it will probably most likely read this data just fine. So you're still going to have the process of this stays the same. Loading it into here stays the same. Then taking it out of here into the third party chart is where the part where it's a little different, okay? It's a little different. But understand that the hard parts, I think, as a developer, me professionally, talking to all you as developers, I think understanding, if I change my picture to color this, I think understanding this over here first, getting it loaded in here with one of the two methods, those are your hardest pieces. And then knowing the chart should look kind of like a little bars up and down and then a line that goes across, or, like the gas gauge charts I have that are in from Google Charts, right? That kind of stuff. So This part down here, everyone focuses on that, but really it's getting the data down to a displayable value over here, right? That's really the critical thing. So getting it through here, into here, summarizing it down. Then once it's in here, you can choose whatever charting tool you want. You could, use free charting tools, use paid charting tools. All right, that's it for today. Appreciate it. Catch you tomorrow. You guys are awesome. Guys and gals, everyone's here. Thank you. Awesome.